last 2 weeks, كل صبح, I was telling my mom, Fayrouz is going to die. Every morning, we're listening in my room, and I was telling her, she's going to die for 2 weeks. And then I had a bad feeling that her time was ending, and I just felt it. And she's like, yeah, she's old, but she won't die. And فجأة زياد الحباني dies. It was crazy, with a very simple word that I think sums up most of what I do. It sounds a bit cliche, but I think it's accurate. Storyteller. Whether it's digital media, whether it's walking tours, whether it's even trying to analyze what's happening, news coverage, I try to paint a narrative that I think is best summed up as a story, but it's the story that I know best. It's my generation, it's my parents' generation. It's really the pre-Civil War and post-Civil War change that Lebanon went through. And I think storytelling is the best way to describe what happened. I think details alone don't add up. You need to paint a picture, and I do that, I think, in everything I do. I can say with full confidence it's one person, it's Sumir Asir, even though I didn't know him personally. I crossed paths with him once in Hamra, but I think it's the way he tried, I think, to paint the same picture. Now, he did it through the written word. He was a historian, he's a professor, he's a journalist and a politician. I'm none of those things. But I was in Ashrafi when he was killed. I was reading about Beirut when he was killed. And I thought the way he described the moment that I was seeing with my own eyes in 2005, and the fact that he was killed on that path, I think it shaped who I am today. And I think it's mostly him. Other people along the way too, but he carries a certain weight in my life, and that's why I still honor his memory through my walking tours. They're a tribute to him. It had no interruption it didn't add or subtract from that. It was there before and it remained after. So I can't say that his assassination changed who I am. I think I'm the same person. Of course, it changed my life. It changed also the fact that I left the country for a few years. But it didn't change the way I relate to Beirut, or for that matter, the way I relate to the story. For me, it's the same. All I know is that I discovered that my heart beats better here. I don't know why. I don't know if it's the entire country. I don't know, for that matter, if it's the entire story. But something feels better here. And now, in my broken body, sitting on a wheelchair, half of my body is not functional. I know people abroad that are less happy than me in my current state. And I think it says a lot. Here and here means much more than your physical well-being, at least the way I live. I know a lot of people that feel the opposite, and I know many Lebanese that are rejecting this country. I found a path to return on my terms, with a limited lifestyle, something that I'm more or less self-sustaining, which is a podcast based on donations. Every other job I do, it's not that much money. This is not a financially lucrative career. But I feel better, and I'd rather feel better than being abroad and lost. And I think being lost abroad is one of the worst feelings possible. It could be a form of romanticizing. It could be. But I know somebody that I think used a different way of describing the same feeling. It's Robert Fisk. He used to deride faux amour, meaning false love, meaning the visitor that falls in love with Beirut for the wrong reasons and then departs. I don't feel that way. For me, it's the opposite. It's real love. So romanticizing, maybe to a degree, but it's on terms that I feel are genuine, not false or not cliche. They're real. I think when we look back years from now, we will see just how much happened in the last few years. Quite a tremendous trip that we've been on. But being here and witnessing this, being able to also interpret the story and being able to sometimes shape it, that's the best feeling in the world. You're playing a role that's fundamental, even if it's not the central role, but you're part of it. I think that is enough for me. I don't want more from life. I'm okay with that. And over time, I think even if the story gets uglier and more violent as it did last year during the war, I would still rather be here under bombardment than abroad with clean air, reliable electricity, and maybe even a longer life. Maybe my lifespan would be longer abroad, but I don't care. I'd rather live a fulfilling life here. I know now with full confidence I'm not burdened or traumatized from what happened, at least when it comes to my own personal life. No, it's not that. I would have been in the same place had he still been alive. It is unrelated, which means he gave me something without me realizing early on. He gave me a love for this country. Now, I don't know how that translates as a child. Maybe I was too young to see how someone else loves Lebanon, but I'm sure that's part of the story for me at least. That gift, I think, has given me something quite special, and I would not trade it with anything else. And I actually have tried leaving. So it's not that I know what it's like to be away from here. I know what it's like to leave on bad terms and leave on comfortable terms. I would still rather be here. So I'm okay with that. I think the identity of Lebanon is magical. And that for me is something that we should cherish and not reject. I'm a big fan of friction. I like discomfort, and I like people living on top of each other that don't see the same thing all the time. I'm attracted to different languages. I like different nationalities, and I like feeling like I'm independent and I'm autonomous without rejecting groups or whatever community identity is. All of that is available here. And I think it's not available in most places. You find it to different degrees in different cities. Beirut maybe is losing it over time. Maybe it's lost quite a bit of it. But this type of, whatever the word is, it could be cosmopolitan. Maybe that's the correct word. I really love that word. And I love what it means. So what it means is actually a mosaic. That's not words that are often abused in Lebanon, I think should be better understood. I don't think of sectarianism in itself as a bad thing. It could just define us. Maybe we are in a bad state, and maybe everything we do looks ugly right now. But I like it. I like that we are not one thing. Identity is key, and that is always in the background of whatever I'm talking about. Also, how we relate not just to the region, but to the world, and why I think this country never got its fair chance. That chance was my parents' generation. They saw it crumble. I saw them also try again, whether it's 2005 or later. It also crumbled again. But I like to honor that struggle. So if there's a struggle I like to look at, it's the times people have genuinely tried to really seek the full potential of this country. No, clearly it's not. And that's why we have the country that we're living in. Had it been enough, we'd be fine. I think it's actually something that we should protect, but you can't protect it just by celebrating it. I know only one thing. When we're not part of regional war, we're better. Whether we're emotionally involved or not is something else. Whether we're culturally attached is something else. But I mean security-wise, when we're not the battlefield for regional war, we're better. And by better, I mean we're not getting killed. We're not fighting each other. We're also not under a certain circumstance where we can't reform. And I think that is the goal, to protect many things, not just a mosaic, but it's actually to protect a very, very delicate, fragile, power-sharing arrangement that has kept most communities at relative ease over time. Not all always, but I think the model should be enhanced and should be reformed. I'm not a big fan of throwing away things too quickly. I'd rather see reform rather than throwing it away entirely and starting over. I don't think we're there, and I don't think we should be there right now. The assassination put my relationship to Lebanon on hold for 4 years, where I didn't look at this country, I didn't look at the news, I didn't answer phone calls related to politics. I left physically for 4 years. I went to a part of the world that has nothing to do with Lebanon. I went to Scotland. And Scotland is the opposite of this country. Except for hospitality, nothing else is the same. And it took me 4 years to realize that that was killing me inside. And I returned determined to not do that again, not to leave the way I did once. I've always had an appreciation for many things in this country, not necessarily politics. It extends to film, it extends to music, it even extends to stories that I think are not elevated. My most recent episode is with a paralyzed friend, somebody who can't move. He's in a wheelchair. We did an episode together in a rehabilitation center that we found ourselves in. That to me is really what I love doing. Political assassinations, I think the highlight came from Luqman Slim. I was here when he was killed. It brought the discussion back into the regular news circuit. I was interviewed a lot as a person who had his father killed. And I think that escalated without me trying to make it escalate. It just became part of my life. And it defined me for a while. But I'm more comfortable with doing other things. I don't like this subject to define me. I mean, I was living here when they killed him, and I was living here when I returned with the same group of people. I can't control that. That is something that I either accept or reject. I thought it was healthier to reject it at first, and I made that decision to leave, but it wasn't fine for me. Also, I don't want to be afraid. And not being afraid of his killers is very important. I didn't leave because I was afraid of them. I was actually afraid for my own well-being up in my mind. It shouldn't matter if we're living next door to Israel. We should be able to govern ourselves with or without that country next door. That should not be the reason we fail. Lebanon shined when Israel was south of the border. Lebanon can shine again. I don't think Israel is the determining factor. Yes, they are horrendous in their war, and yes, they're clearly determining what they see fit in the region today. But I don't want this country exposed to that kind of war. And I think Lebanon is better off if we're not engaged in that war. And I mean security-wise, not culturally, not even politically in a real sense. Politically meaning diplomacy. We can take this cause to the UN. Lebanon should be able to act like a country. If Hezbollah was a Lebanese militia only, I think Joseph Aoun, Nawaf Salam, and Nabih Berri would be willing to disarm the group. They would take risks that I think are feasible, and I think that group would have been disarmed. Hezbollah is not a Lebanese militia only. And had it been just a Lebanese militia, we wouldn't be talking about them. I don't think anyone in this country is willing to go to war with Iran. And I mean that, war with Iran. Because trying to disarm Hezbollah would create war in Lebanon. And I think they're right. I think Joseph Aoun is right. Maybe it's a war we could win. Maybe. But it's a risk. And by we, I don't mean, this is not a sectarian way of defining it. By we, I mean the Lebanese army could potentially disarm Hezbollah. But we would also hurt the Lebanese army in the way, and I think civilians would die. The most peaceful process, I think, is diplomacy, not a reckless pursuit. To a degree, yes. Not entirely, but to a degree. I spent 2 years, almost 3 years at the Lebanese embassy in Washington, D.C. I was old enough to realize what was going on, and it's the years that are not examined enough on how opponents to the Syrian regime were quiet back then, but trying. That quiet diplomacy, I think, did pave the way to many things that were positive later. That's one track. The other one is the more visible, proactive diplomacy, which is 1701, and I lived through that. I saw how it was put together. I saw how Lebanon played a role in it too, and I think my father is a key component to that and the Ba'abda Declaration, which is a Lebanese push. And that's local diplomacy. That's, to a degree, almost local shuttle diplomacy. Whether it succeeds or not is not the story, I think, but the intention is accurate. Otherwise, it's war. And I don't think war is the path. I don't think war solves our problems. we're not the same age, but we're both too young to know exactly what Fayrouz meant for the world. And we're lucky that she's ours. Now, I'm not trying to own her, but the fact is, she put Lebanon on a stage that no one else has. And her husband and the whole family, the Rahbani family, the fact that they were able to make us love Lebanon and make anyone who loved her music love Lebanon too is, I think, once in a lifetime. And I don't think we're ever going to see someone of that stature again. Fayrouz did more for Palestine than Hassan Nasrallah. That's the power. I think it's true, and I stick by that. It's so strong that I think it will stay with us after she passes away too. The cultural contribution we gave to this part of the world and the world at large is tremendous. And unfortunately, over time, we've lost a lot of that physically. But Lebanese, whether they're in Dubai or New York, Paris, or anywhere, Montreal, they're doing it there. And I think they will keep doing it abroad. Whether or not they do it at home, I think depends on whether or not Lebanon is viable. And Lebanon's viability, I believe this in my heart, means we cannot be involved in regional war again. We are in 2025. It's 35 years since the civil war ended, and we're just coming out of another war. This has to stop. I think we should be the last generation to discuss these challenges.